Hello everyone, I am Rod and I am the game design instructor for the Academy of Entertainment Arts over at Dixie Hollins High School. If you are one of my students, it's Mr. Flowers to you, and welcome to this video tutorial. Alright, so here we are, finally, jumping into the Unreal Engine. And it should look familiar. Hopefully we have everything we need inside of our content browser. Inside my content browser, we should have a static mesh folder. If you don't have one, go ahead and create one by right-clicking on Content and going to Add New, and then Folder. Call this Static Mesh. And then inside my static mesh folder is where I'm going to drag and drop my pieces from my door frame. So I will go to my 3D modeling folder, and I have my door and my door frame. Now, we did not rotate these when we cooked these out as object files. So what's going to happen is when we bring them in, they are not going to be oriented correctly. So I'm just going to bring them in so you can see that. I'm just going to say import object. And then I will bring in the other piece as well. Door frame. Import object. So if I drag my door frame in, we can see, give it a second, that it is lying flat on the ground. And the reason it's lying flat on the ground is we did not rotate this in Maya when we exported this out. So what I'm going to do is jump back into Maya. I'm going to grab the door, go into here. Now remember, inside of Maya, up is Y, forward is Z, left and right is X. Inside of Unreal, you can see left and right is X, forward is Y, and up is Z. So the Y and Z axes are flipped. So we have to make sure that we do that in here. If you export this out as an FBX file, you don't have to do that. But I don't like the way the FBX, the textures kind of come out weird, and I don't like the way it looks in Unreal. So I avoid doing that unless I need to, until they fix that. So I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees in the x-axis. So you can see rotate x is 90. File, export selection. And this is going to be my door. So I'll just highlight it and just re-export. Yep. And then I will grab the door frame, rotate it 90 in X, select it, door frame, export, and then I can jump back into Unreal, and I can really quickly just right-click and do a re-import, and it'll flip it for me, which is handy. Re-import. Now I can bring the door and the frame in. Okay. If your door is not centered exactly, you can always just center it up. If you have an issue with it sliding, over here we have our snaps. So this is your translation snaps. That's movement snaps. This is rotation snaps, and this is scale snaps. Right now I have it set to 1. It's usually set to 10, so it might jump a few units. If it doesn't go perfect, you can always change these back. Okay, and there's our pivot. You can see our pivot is there, so if we were to swing the door out, hit spacebar, you can change your pivot. You can swing the door out and it rotates Very nice. Okay. One thing you might notice if you were to jump in and play is, jump in here. I can't walk through the door. Our door frame, the door frame is registering as a solid object because Unreal puts a basic boundary box around this, and that's going to be a problem. So down here in our content browser, I'm going to open up my door frame, and inside this little output window, you can see this purple highlight for our boundary box. Over here on the Details tab, just scroll down to the static mesh settings right here. And we have a collision component. If I drag this out, it says collision complexity. Right now it's set to default, which means it's just going to make a basic boundary box. If we go to use complex collision, what Unreal will do is it will look at the actual geometry of the model and make a boundary based on that geometry. This is expensive on the system, so only use it on simple objects. Since this is pretty simple, it only has a few pieces to really check. It can kind of get away with it, but when you have something that has a lot of detail, that really bogs down the system, so you have to be careful with it. And then I will just hit the little X arrow. It should auto-save that. And now if I jump in, I should be able to walk right through my door. Yay! Or the door frame. Sweet! Now we're going to take the door frame, or the door, and stick it back in the frame. You can see how it's jumping a little bit and it's too far. So I'm just going to adjust my grid snaps, move this back some. And if you're OCD and you must have it, you can work on it. I'm OCD, I must have it, so I'm going to do that. Good enough. So what we want to do now is we need to set up a Matinee. Before we can set up a Matinee, it's recommended that you convert your static mesh into a movable mesh. So with our door selected, over here on the Details tab, so Details, says Transform. We have Mobility, Static or Movable. So just check Movable. Simple as that. If you try to load a static mesh into a Matinee, it's pretty good at recognizing that and switching it to movable automatically for you, but sometimes it forgets and it doesn't work. So we will now open a Matinee and just do Add Matinee. When the Matinee window pops up, it looks a little scary. Don't worry. It's just a basic animation window. We have a time slider, we have a graph editor, and if we scroll our mouse in and out, you can see the components of your time slider. Up here on this far right, we have a snap button that'll let us snap our spaces on here for our time slider. To manipulate the time slider, if you click and drag, you can drag the actual slider bar. To change the position on the timeline, you need to hover your mouse over the little tick marks. Wait till the arrow or the little arrow turns into a cross, and then you can move these. The green one is what you're looking at as far as your playback view. The red is the actual length of your time slider, or of your timeline. So I'm going to grab the red one, I'm going to drag this down to 2 seconds. And I will make sure the green is all the way up, because I want my playback to be the same. And with Matinee open, I will select my door, and then I will right click right here under Tracks. Add new group. This is going to be door. And if you have multiple doors, like if you have 2 sliding doors that open, you can add both doors here as separate tracks. So this door is going to be this group. I'm going to right click, add new movement track. and we add the new movement track, you will see right here, it drops in a keyframe. I'm going to grab that keyframe, and I will click on my door. That sets the first position. Now what I want to do is drag the time slider up to the next position. In this case, I'm going to go all the way to 2 seconds. And you can either hit the Add Key button, or you can press Enter. I'm just going to press Enter, and it'll drop in a new key. With this key selected, I will select my door, hit spacebar to bring up my rotation tool, and I will rotate my door out, swing it up as far as I need it to be open. And Unreal will make some guesses and interpolate between these 2 points. So if I scrub my time slider, it says, okay, so that's your closed position, this is your open position, and I'm just going to make the in-betweens for you, which is handy. And we can do the playback. Awesome. We can close Matinee. Now, if you have a level that has multiple doors, I recommend naming your Matinee files. So inside of our World Outliner, I'm going to look for my Matinee that I just added. Where is my Matinee? There it is. If I select the Matinee, he's actually hiding way down here under the floor. I'm going to bring him up, spacebar. I'm just going to bring it next to the door, that way I can locate it next time I need it. With it selected, under Details, I can change Matinee Actor, and I'm going to say door _1. That way I know which Matinee this is and which door it controls. There we go. If you have like a sliding door, you might have 2 doors in there, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do now is we need to control this so that when we walk up to it or we push a button or whatever, the door will open for us. So first thing we're going to do is come over to Volumes, click that, and we have a bunch of different options for volumes. We have blocking volumes, kill zones, level, streaming. This is handy if you have big levels and you have them connecting, so you like walk over a position and they transition naturally for you. I'm going to go all the way down to a trigger volume. I will drag that in. You can see this little green box up here. I don't know where he went. Where are you, trigger volume? He went way over there for some reason. I'm going to move this to my door. And if it's floating and you don't like that, you can press the End key, and it will just snap it to the floor for you. The trigger volume should be bigger than your door. That way your player has some time to approach it. And my door swings out this way, so I need more space on this side of the door than I do on that side of the door. But you just want to make sure that your boundary box has enough space in it so when your player walks up, it doesn't get hit by the door as he approaches. So I'm going to make this skinnier because I don't need this to be huge. So I'll change it to my little scaling widget. That's by hitting spacebar, by the way. And I will grab the little red one and I will scale it in because it doesn't need to be fatter than the door, but it definitely needs to be longer than the door. And I'm going to grab the Y and I will scale this out. Then I'll hit the arrow and I'll just move this a little bit. If you want it centered, that's fine. But I know I need more space on the front side of the door than I do on the back side of the door. Because if I come this way, the door will just swing open for me. If I go this way, the door will swing open and hit me. So I just want to compensate for that. And then, with the trigger volume up, we're going to have to edit some blueprints. So go up to Blueprint, and we're not going to create a blueprint class. Instead, we're just going to do an open level blueprint. So do that. And this is our introduction to visual scripting inside of Unreal. For anybody who's watching this who isn't part of my class, this is very similar to the Kismet for Unreal Engine 3 and UEK. It's same thing. They just call it blueprints. This is visual scripting, so there's no code that we're typing in, but we will have little nodes that we can kind of plug in together. So I'm going to right click, and because I have my trigger volume already selected, I'm going to add event for trigger volume 1. I'm just going to hit the little drop down. There's a collision option, and I'll open the collision. And right here I have an add on actor begin overlap. So that means when our player steps in that collision box that we just made, that trigger box, it'll trigger. So I'm going to drag that in. And then I want the other one as well. So I'm going to right click, add event for trigger volume, and this is going to be add on actor end overlap. So when we step outside the volume, it'll do something else. I'll just put these over here. Okay. Now I want to come down and select my Matinee, go back into my blueprint, I will right click, and I have create a reference to door 1. We can add one of those in here. So we need one of those. Right click. Let's see, what add events do we have? We'll have to type it in. If with our Matinee selected, we can type in, we'll try cinematic first. So cinematic, we have a play. Go ahead and drag that in. And you can see when we drag the play in, it automatically selects our Matinee actor, which is handy. So I'll just delete this old one. I'll just drag this little wire. I'll put this right between these guys because we're going to share it. And then I will do the opposite. I'll right click, I'll go in, I'll type in cinematic or sine, C-I-N-E, and do a reverse. And reverse comes in also with a reference to our Matinee actor. I can just delete the reference and take the one that's currently there and plug that into the target. There we go. That way we're just not using extra nodes. And then I will take this little white output arrow and put that into this play's input. And then the on actor end overlap will go into the reverse. Once we have that set up, we can hit compile. And we should be able to test this in-game. So hit play. If I walk up to it, it opens. If I walk away, it closes. Walk away, it closes. And I should be able to walk up without getting hit. Yay. Now if I'm too quick and I walk up, it will whack me in the face and push me aside. So just to be aware of that so you don't get beat up by your door. And that is how to create, set up, and bring in a door from Maya to Unreal. I'm going to go back into my blueprints, and I just want to give this guy a comment. You can press, first I'm going to select one of these nodes, and I'm just going to press C on the keyboard, and it'll bring up a comment box. And I will drag out the comment box to encapsulate this, and I'm going to tell this that this is door 1 animation. The reason I want to name this is when we start adding more and more doors, this thing will be full. And we won't know what the heck anything is unless it's labeled. Okay. Hit compile, and I will close my Matinee.